We are here in room 207, and we are about to call the roll.
Mr. Slocum.
Here.
Mr. Walsh.
Here.
Mr. Berwick.
Present.
Mr. Jinks.
Here.
Mr. Mylone.
Here.
Ms. Pavano. Here. Ms. Nichols. Here. Mr. Talbot.
Here.
Mr. Villabert. We
Here.
have a quorum present.
Terrific. Let's rise to the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Once again, welcome. We're here. The primary discussion tonight is town manager's goals and objectives and a review of same. And I will, with that, turn it over to our illustrious Personnel Committee and Chair, Sylvia. And I would have to acknowledge we have Mr. Walsh and Mr. Talbot, contributors to this effort, which I must also applaud you. I think it was very good, the way it evolved. We may feel differently when we talk about it, but I think the process was at least good for me to be a part of. So thank you, Sylvia.
Thank
Go
you.
with it.
First of all, I want to thank everybody for putting up with my neck, getting for me. But I'm glad you all had a nice vacation. It's good. You started out seeing John's goals and objectives and his own personal comments. So when you had an opportunity to look at the goal and read his assessment of what he felt his success with those would have helped you in making the decisions you had. The formula and the process that we used was trying to streamline the way we did this evaluation. In the past, we've always had to sit around the table like this with not a lot of preparation, just a list of goals and objectives. And we hoped as a committee that this would give you some food for thought before we sat down for this meeting so that you could hear his comments and read other comments, and hopefully some of the comments that were, some of you chose to write fulsome comments, as Tim would say. But what was interesting to the committee and to me when I was typing, and I will take no responsibility for the errors in spelling. They were cut and pasted from exactly what you wrote. So if the spelling errors are there, it wasn't me. But I wanted to see so that we could all take a look at these as we made our comments and just look at the way people chose to rate. The ratings are at the top of each section. And you will see that for the most part, they were all pretty positive. And I think there is some leeway in choosing. I know we had some conversations with some of you about what was a 5 and what was a 4 and what was a 3. And some people chose to say if you met all the goals, that was a 5, but there were some other issues that you'd like to see changed or added to or suggestions to make it better. Some of you said it wasn't perfect. You got all the objectives, so it was a better than average performance, but then you added your suggestions on the bottom. So I think by and large, the difference between the 4 and 5 was fairly slight. Okay. Sean, have you had a chance to look at these this afternoon? Yeah. How do you feel the reporting was? Has it been helpful or not helpful?
Definitely helpful. Again, and first of all, just thank you to everyone for the comments and the thoughtfulness with the ratings. And there's a lot of great ideas, a lot of great feedback in there. And I think just sometimes the forced process of it a little bit helps. Right. Just taking those few minutes that we don't always have in our busy lives to kind of, give that feedback. And I take it all of the comments very seriously, and also very much with an eye towards making improvements wherever we can, and a lot of ideas I have to make some improvements within departments that we're actively working on, and this certainly reaffirms that effort. So thank you, and I certainly really appreciate the thoughtfulness behind a lot of the comments.
And I appreciate everybody's comments. I think maybe if the goal tonight is to go through each one of these sections and open it up to your comments and your comments about the comments that were made or about the way things were rated. Tonight, we are not going to come to a total conclusion. When we're finished tonight, the Personnel Committee will go have a meeting with Sean, take all of these suggestions, the ones we have tonight, and we will work together to come up with the goals for the 22-23 year, which is already started, but, and bring them back to you for your approval and your discussion. And at that time, we will also work on a presentation as to the contract terms. In the past, Sean, we have had the town manager come up with a request or a proposal, and we will ask you to do that as well. But, so tonight, it's basically so we can talk to Sean one-on-one and have a conversation about each one of these sections. So when we start with the COVID comments, pretty much everybody was on the same page, and we all agreed that this performance there was stellar. So I invite anybody to add comments or anything they would like to add to that or suggestions.
Ms. Nichols, I don't have anything to add, but I did have one question also about tonight. And I know that personnel will meet with Sean about goals and objectives, but I would hope perhaps out of tonight, there could be some of that coming forth in the conversations
Oh,
we're
yeah.
having. So that's all I would want to add to the conversations, because I think this is really the time we get to talk to the town manager at a different level.
Right.
And we don't have to go into executive session, it's all the town's best interest, or what you think is the best interest, and I hope we can do that also.
I would think that as we go through each one of these general things, we might retire some of these completely, or we may add to them, or we may put them in different priority as we go through. So I'm hoping that's what will happen from these comments. So, so let's begin with the COVID pandemic, and I invite whoever would like to be first on.
First, I just want to make a comment, because having worked in a corporate environment, I had many training sessions on how to do these types of reviews, and this was almost identical to reviews that we would have to do on a scale of 1 to 5. And we were always told that 3 is they've done their job satisfactorily. 4 is they've gone above and beyond. 5 is extraordinary. They've come up with new things that weren't even on the goals and stuff like that. That's how I looked at this, and it's not a way to just say, because I think we all will agree. I mean, Sean has done a stellar job in all areas. But when I was working for somebody, I wanted to know, okay, how can I get better? How can I'm not looking to get 5s. I want to do 4s at least, and I want to know how to do better. And that's how I looked at this. And I think I really appreciated this type of format, because I think not only does it help us start thinking about what we have to do, but I think it is going to help Sean tremendously, because we all gave different comments on different things. And looking through these, there are things that I didn't think of that were in there. And then there were some things that were similar to what I was saying. And I think that's how it is. But specifically to COVID, I mean, this was an unexpected happening to us. And not only last year, but the year before. I mean, I think Sean and his team had jumped right into it. And I think they were ahead of the game on a lot of instances. And I think, they did a stellar job, like Sylvia said. And I think, there wasn't much to say that needed improvement on there, because I think you were doing things that none of us even have thought about. And I appreciated all the hard work that you and your team put into this. The pool was important to get those vaccines going, and the way that you coordinated it was really good. And I think the town appreciated it, and the council appreciated it as well.
COVID was an interesting situation for all of us to deal with. I know I personally appreciated your updates, being at home and not being able to go out. So it was really good to know what was going on in the outside world, and that we were being well taken care of, and that you had everything under control. And I think you were just outstanding. And I thank you for that.
I appreciate that. Only just, as Don said, it was definitely a team approach. So I
Right.
appreciate the comments. Certainly, I feel something of the quarterback of the team, if you will. But we there was a whole team effort.
I do mean all of you.
And I know you, and I appreciate it, but I just don't, we all worked very hard in some very unprecedented situations. We are very proud of it.
I don't want to prolong it too much, but I think with the COVID, your creativity and your leadership were unbelievable. I think the fact that you had the librarians going out and calling the shut-ins and the seniors was a very important aspect of it, an important group of my town that needed to have some connection. I think that was very important. I think the fact that you said to Chestercott, use our place, even though we're only one of 3 towns that are part of that, said the heck with it, we're doing what's right, we're moving forward, we're getting it done, showed the leadership and the strategic thinking of getting things done and that we wanted, and I greatly appreciated that.
If I may, I know to that point, I know when the COVID thing started, one of my first selfish fears was, we were paying all these people to be doing nothing. And that's a crude way of presenting it in a way, but I'm fairly direct and polite at the same time. But I recall, like the library is a perfect example. They were closed. They were going to be closed for a long time. But I say we, Sean and his staff didn't waste that personnel in a sense. It was utilized in a very efficient, effective way. And I think that is something, because we were all working on that zero budget. Mm-hmm. We all know that. That's not last year, the year before, but this is a 2-year thing. And I think, it's shown itself, borne itself. And that's the best way to put it. You did make use of the resources and justify everybody's involvement in the effort, which is good. That was great. A surprise. So.
All right, so having said that, I assume you wanted to say something. I didn't see you. Go ahead.
That's okay. Just from a personnel standpoint, to start off, like Don said, I'll echo a lot of Don's comments that this type of review is, for me, long overdue, that we're doing this. And I was saying to Sean on the way down that it's not a Sean thing. I felt this way when Michael was here too, that we don't really give the proper review of our town manager to give them the feedback they need to continue to succeed. And I think this goes a long way in doing that. Sylvia, I give you a lot of credit for coming up with this. This is a great way to do it. It's anonymous. It puts everything out there. Nothing is hidden, but there's when you have 9 bosses, this is the type of stuff that you want to see so that you get feedback from everybody. So thank you all for going along with this. Specifically now on goal number 1, COVID, just doing some quick math. This was your highest rating of the 5 categories. I don't think there's a question from the feedback you heard that the job you did with handling this situation was exemplary, and we appreciate what you did. I am interested, though. There were a couple comments regarding Chesprocott, and if you would just comment for a minute, because I know you're on the board now, if you see the same things that were pointed out in the improvement area.
Yeah, I definitely do. I think, and I highlighted, I think in second to last comment, the relationship between Chesprocott and the town should be further defined and managed. I think that really hits the nail on the head. I think we need, I think we need some more updates and communication between both the town council and Chesprocott in terms of our expectations of them and vice versa, some of their needs and long-term plans, because sometimes I feel like we're a little out of the loop on that. And I do think my secondary role as a board member for Chesprocott has helped me become more informed as to some of their plans that they've had prior to me joining. And I know there are some opportunities for us to continue to improve that relationship, and I think make the council more aware of some of their goals and some of their challenges that they're facing. And so definitely an opportunity there. I definitely agree with, and I would, to Mr. Silva's point earlier, I would suggest that as an objective that we define as something we want to make progress on. When we're sitting here a year from now, I want to say we've made a lot of improvements there to the council's benefit, the town's benefit.
I don't think it's a standalone, but I think it
Sure.
probably can be weaved into
Right,
something.
into the emergency.
Yeah. Thank you, Sylvia.
Okay. Anybody else? So I think it is, we're good with that. Now, hopefully COVID wanes a little and we
Yes.
don't have to have this one of the highest priorities. Okay. So,
I was gonna say, that was another
Okay.
question. This was one of the categories. Obviously, hopefully by next year, this isn't a category anymore.
And it wasn't one in terms of its own standalone that came out of our workshop, right? We had, the other items, the obviously the advancing education pieces and the recreation pieces, and the emergency management is there, obviously, and public safety. It's a component of that, but you're right. This was unique that kind of this element of public safety, public health became its own priority for kind of unprecedented reasons.
And going
Until
forward, that's
monkeypox.
something we need to pay attention to because we give you the defined goals and objectives, but as we all know, life is never the same from one day to the next. So something may come up in the middle of whatever we plan for the next year that requires more attention than we originally, or attention that we never knew we had to do. So we need to make sure we allow for that piece when we're defining the goals and expecting what John's job should be. Okay. So let's go to finance, and Peter, you can be our mathematician and see where we are with that.
41,
Okay, and what was the first one?
43.
Okay, so there we are, okay. Comments about this, I think that we all know Sean's finance background is certainly so beneficial in helping to guide our finance department staff to begin with, which is also fantastic. And I think we set some pretty clear objectives that he was able to meet in light of all the other things that were going on. The comments and the suggestions here were very good. I'll let you speak first this time, Sean. What do you think about this, the comments and the improvements? Do you think that the improvements that we have suggested or had concerns about would be concerns of yours?
I do, absolutely. I think there are, I know wastewater treatment plant came up a couple times within this section, I think in another section or two. I think it's an example, and that's been borne out through ongoing discussions with department heads, with public works department head there, in terms of a better regular updates, regular oversight to try to make sure that we don't have that kind of hopefully unique situation happen again. Because obviously there's budgetary impacts, and it's, that's embarrassing for us as management. I think we're fortunately managing through it better than it initially looked like it was going to be from a financial standpoint. But that doesn't excuse, I think we should have been more aware of what was happening sooner. So I definitely take that very seriously. And I think the comment, I guess it's the first one under improvements, of a little bit of a better grip on the town departments in terms of some advanced, notice and monitoring of some of the budgetary concerns as they come up, I think is definitely well taken, and something we've already been doing, frankly, over the last few months, as we've just really tried to make sure we have a close eye on something, especially with new folks and acting folks in roles. You want to make sure you have another layer of oversight.
So that leads us to perhaps another goal and objective, a general goal and objective to as or part of something else, but indeed monitoring that. Anybody want to make some comments here?
Because one of the things that we really had to set up is for the potential of the schools coming, and I think the way that Jim and you and his whole group put together the sale of the bonds and everything else, and with our budget share, I think it has set us up into being able to create or when I say affordable, but a manageable school modernization that I think when the town sees it, a lot of the credit goes to the way that we have set up our finances right now, because we knew this was coming and we wanted to make sure that this is going to be there. So I do that, but I will echo your statements about the improvements of having a better grip on the towns. And I know you're doing that, the different departments, and I know you're doing that now. But those are just things that happen, and sometimes you don't realize it until it happens, and then you go, okay, now I got to do that. So that's just human nature for all of us.
Anybody else? Sandy?
I'd like to make one comment on the, comment over here under, suggestion of improvement. Continue to work and address audit of the sports program. Jim Jaskat did mention at our last audit meeting that the audit had taken place. We have not received any information back on that audit, so, I think that most of us are concerned and would like to see that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I have not seen it myself either, but I will continue to follow
What
up.
I heard was that they are going to present it to the Board of Ed first before they bring it to us.
Wow.
That's what they.
Can you follow up on that?
It'll be buried, yeah,
I think
definitely.
But,
follow up some
Well,
of
let me
that.
ask you a logistical issue on that,
No,
if
go
I
ahead.
could.
Yep.
Isn't that Jim, through you, that's ordering that, so he's the owner of the auditing?
Yeah.
And shouldn't that be coming this way?
We
I
can
mean, just not to be technical about it, but yeah, let's get technical about it.
Yeah, I think, I mean, certainly, either way, it's a public document that's available
Right.
either way, and so
Right.
certainly if it's
Right.
available, it can be shared to
Yeah.
both at the same time.
And as we do know, when they're doing the audit, they always go to management and say, you know, they get the management's take on what the issues are that they find anyway, and there may be some responses that can temper what they were thinking initially. But if they've completed it and they've signed off on the auditing firm,
Yeah.
then that ought to have gone to Jim.
I wasn't aware that it was completed and signed off on. I was aware
Okay,
the
it
field
may
work
not
was done.
They may be in the management phase where they're.
Last I heard, the field work was done, but there was nothing final
Okay.
to be
There
presented.
wasn't-
to
that
the
makes
board.
more
Yeah,
sense.
I hadn't
That, then
At least
they're
that's
in
how it
the-
was explained.
They're in the negotiating phase too. It's not really called that, but
Right.
that's what they're in.
Okay,
Thank you.
formalize.
But we can certainly follow up.
I had a comment or two if I may.
Sure.
I've always felt that in the finance area, Sean was handed a pretty good situation. He didn't come into a house on fire by any stretch of the imagination. And I also feel it's the one area where the council really works hand in glove. Maybe it's deceptive on Sean's part, but I always feel our budget is really well crafted and worked hard upon with this council. And I think, or any council. And I do think Sean's made it very plain and clear for all of us so we can make important points. But I think the easy phase of this is gone. And I think for that reason alone, Sean couldn't possibly get a 5 on this until we see how we clear the decks and succeed if that referendum on the schools passes, which I certainly hope it does. But I think that's indeed the biggest challenge. So while we've set the table as best we can, I think that is Sean's and the council's biggest struggle forward. If maybe struggle's the wrong word, but I think managing expectations is just as important as succeeding here, because this is going to be really hard. And I think when it becomes his objective, he's going to probably have to lower the temperature for all of us, because this is a big deal. And that's not to give him a pass in any means, but I think he was handed a good position, a good arc to sail in.
And I would echo that. I think certainly with respect to and we will do absolutely everything we can to maintain the AAA bond rating, make no mistake. But some of the measurements that they use can just be the debt that a town is incurring and other things. And we know that's a kind of echoing what you said. We have a lot of other great stories to tell, a lot of great financial foundations and great economic development, and we make that case to the rating agencies as effectively as I think any town will, and we will continue to do that. But to your point, we're embarking on something that hasn't been done in a number of decades.
So I'm developing a list of potential goals and objectives as we go along. So this is why this conversation is good, because it brings forth. Anybody else? Did you want to say something?
No, I was just gonna say, one obviously a key objective obviously is hold a successful bond sale. It's very specific to a bond sale in March 2021 and to maintain our AAA bond. So, obviously going forward, we realize obviously we've got bond sales, which are gonna maybe potentially more difficult,
Right.
and also obviously keeping a AAA bond rating is going to potentially be
Yeah.
more difficult. So
just to piggyback on that, I don't think we could put in there to keep the AAA bond rating, to make an attempt to, and make other, but if there's 10 criteria the rating agencies are looking at, and we could meet 8 or 9 of them and not that one, and can't do anything about it, it's out of our hands.
Exactly, right.
But if we present well and we make sure that the other funds are properly funded and the management is good, that's
Then that would
going
be
to
the
help
goal,
along
rather
the way.
than
Right.
be that
And
specific.
the economic growth is the big thing that they're
Yeah,
gonna look at.
absolutely.
You know,
Yeah.
that's the big thing.
It's the potential, right,
Yeah.
that's a good thing, okay. So having said that, we're on to economic development, so, you all had some very interesting comments about that and some good suggestions. Who wants to jump in on that one?
Well, could Peter give us a
Could
score?
Peter give us a score? Yeah, right, okay, Peter, give us a
Tied.
score.
Tied for second with 41.
Okay.
No,
It's too many small
Yeah,
numbers.
right, I know, you just have to do it in your head, right?
Multiply
Okay.
by 9.
So anybody have any particular something you'd like to say, I think from my perspective, the changes in the department, Jerry Sitko has done a great job for us, and he had started us on the path of some good direction. Andrew has been, a shot in the arm with enthusiasm and energy and has the grant knowledge and all of that. I think it's positive. I think we have to be careful, in my opinion, not to focus everything on 2 projects, Ball and Socket and North End. We also need to be careful to be thinking about the balance of housing and the other kinds of businesses. And I also think that my thing would be to continue to encourage the businesses that are already here to stay here. And I don't know, take them a sandwich for lunch and sit down and talk to them, but go into their businesses and say, we're glad you're here, because they're the ones who are gonna be also bearing an increased tax burden. And as much as we wanna see new people in, we really need to put that as a piece, in my opinion, for economic development, to make sure that we're supporting the businesses that we already have. So, anybody else? Yeah,
I'd like to comment on this one because I'm not sure if, Sean, this is your area of highest expertise or experience, but I have the sense that you have a commitment to doing as much here as possible. And I do think, as others have said, it's critically important to the future of the town. And I do sense that you're committed to this, both in terms of the staff you've surrounded yourself with and your own commitment to do the right thing. I do, as someone who grew a business here in this town and got to about 200 employees, I do sense that there's a lack of interest in our existing businesses in the past. I had a good relationship with Jerry and other staff people, and of course, my cousin was the town manager. But there wasn't really anyone that ever made an effort to come down and say, boy, thanks for employing 200 people in the town of Cheshire, and what can we do for you? And how can we help you get housing for your people and things like that? It never happened.
No.
And I think that's important. It's important for people to want to stay, to hear that they're appreciated, as well as they can become ambassadors to people that want to come to the community. Because the best way you get new people to come here is if they call an existing business, say, this is a great town, they care about me, they've taken care of me. That's what matters when they're trying to make their final decisions.
100%.
So I think Sean is making a real effort to change the dynamic here, and I appreciate that. That's all I wanted to say.
Okay,
One of the things one of the biggest vacancies we have is a lot of office space, especially on West Johnson, those offices there. It's a lot of office space, and I think we need to figure out a way to fill some of those offices too. I know people complain, why are they building a bank here when they already have a bank that's vacant down there? We have no control over that. I mean, people who buy properties and want to build something on there, I mean, if it falls within the zoning, that's what it is. It is what it is. I don't think businesses are going to come into this town just to open a business because there might be 10 of the same businesses in here, and they say, maybe we'll fail, but we're going to try. I think businesses are coming into this community because they know it's a vibrant community that will support their business. But I think, along with John's point, how do you keep the existing? I don't have 200 employees. I barely have 2 employees. But I'm a new business and 3-year-old business, and I'm still trying to figure out the way it works in this town as well in terms of running a business. And it's interesting. I do know that I'm drawing people from out of town into our town because of my business. So that, although I might not have 200 employees, I'm seeing, 5 to 10 people a day who are coming. Many of them are out of town people who are coming into our town and might be supporting other businesses in our town. So it is important to make sure that we maintain the businesses we have while still trying to support. And I'm not saying, and I agree with Sylvia. I mean, the North End and the ball and soccer seem to be getting all of our attention. I'm not saying ignore them because those are important cogs in this wheel, but we have to also look at the other spaces we have. And I'd be cautious because about some. I mean, one thing with the North End. I mean, there are developers who are financially supporting it. With the ball and socket, it's a volunteer group that is trying to support this. That means a lot of money, and we have to be careful about how much time and effort we put into that. It's important that we get that building up and running, but I also I want us to make sure that we move cautiously with that too.
I'd like to just make a comment. If those of you who were at the evening in white, and you heard that announcement at the evening in white, that they have now had the first donor that has committed to $1 million,
Yes.
an individual donor who has agreed to give them $1 million commitment. So
15 more.
yeah, so yeah, right. So they're beginning to generate some interest and
That's great.
and so forth. So yeah, I agree with you. But I mean, I think that
Mhm.
as you see it open, it's going to attract more support for that. I think that it's important that we market the town, and that's what Andrew does as a retailer, and you're a retailer, marketing is the key. And as you say, John, just the simple process of perhaps going to have a tour of a business, that you make a brief video, or you see it all the time, that the CBIA, whoever it is in Connecticut, the small business people, they will go say, we're going to visit X company and we're going to interview so-and-so on TV. And we're going to say, now we don't have TV, but we have YouTube and we have those kinds of things. And we have Mike can go there and say, well, here we have, this business and Sweet Claude's, we're going to come and check it out. And they're getting a lot of publicity now, but Rebel Interactive, just take a little video tour there for a couple of minutes and put it on that, or have a printed piece of literature for anybody who is considering bringing a business to Cheshire, giving them the support of some printed material that says Mr. Malone likes his business here, Mr. Walsh likes his business here, whatever. So to me, that's an important piece. You had,
I
Yeah.
had just a comment or two. Number one, I don't think town hall is the Chamber of Commerce. Number two, I do think what the town council and the town manager have been really diligently working on are policies that make it easier for some businesses to exist in town. But I think ultimately, like I said, I think the first statement is we're not a Chamber of Commerce. We have to be a member of the Chamber of Commerce, but I don't know that we go out and actively beyond Andrew's efforts, really go out other than with our best efforts with tax policy and things that are business friendly, which I think the council can play a bigger role in. I don't think as a citizen of Cheshire, I want to count on the government in town, being responsible for a big new investment that took place here necessarily, nor can the Chamber of Commerce take credit for it. It's a delicate balance. That's all I'm trying to say here. I don't want to have heightened expectations on town hall staff necessarily to be responsible for what goes on economically in Cheshire. I think we have to be conscious of that. It's us in this room as much as it is the town manager. I think. I could be wrong. And we need your support there, and you need our support there. But I haven't taken up the phone and made a call to business A, B, or C, or asked them how they were doing either. I mean, that's a big ask, although I think it's a good ask.
And I agree with you, Tim, about that, but I think that there are ways to do it that aren't chamber-related ways. There are ways to go and to sit and talk to them and say, how can we help you as a business? Are there tax incentives that could be helpful to you? Are there programs that you're having trouble with? Are you having difficulty with the building department? Are you having, that's the job of, and that's what I'm sort of saying. But as you do that, you publicize that you've gone to Mr. Barley's business and asked him and just made him part of the decision-making process. That's the way you get volunteers to help, because there might be people in business who would be willing to come and be part of the planning of the town. So that's all. Yeah, I agree with you. It's not a Chamber of Commerce project, not out to drive business to Mr. Walsh necessarily, even though he's a good tool.
You can drive it to me.
Yeah, right, or you, yeah, right, or you, right, okay, yeah.
One of the things I just wanted to comment is that, ultimately, I think obviously economic development in this town is going to be very a big important thing, especially as we look to some of our big projects. And it's funny because my father-in-law lives in North Haven, and you look at the two different towns, as far as how he's commenting about how we had no mill rate growth, but part of that is that they're just set up differently. They've got a larger economic and commercial development areas and what they have, and we're kind of limited also because we really have one main artery through town that kind of is where those things happen. So we do need to sort of focus on where we can focus them and maximize the space that we have. But to John's point is regarding businesses that we already have. I just want to put, I did think that it was a tremendous idea, and I think we need to think more of those ideas, how to help current businesses, when the suggestion was maybe try to get the bus route to go around and hit some of these other businesses, especially because some of those businesses, especially in the north end there, are reliant on people who are coming from outside town to provide the labor for some of these things, and to make that transition and transportation needs easier for some of those businesses, obviously help them get the staff that they need to, maintain their businesses here in town. And so I think some of those ideas were how do we help businesses and services come together to maximize their labor and stuff. I think is very important.
Well, if I could kind of respond to, and it's a lot of wonderful comments and ideas. And I guess on that specific one, that idea came actually right out of a meeting Andrew and I had in Michael Bizzuto's office, where he specifically was saying how hard it is to get some of the folks he needs in his warehouses up here. And so it's actually reinforcing what you're saying, that some of those meetings, especially with some key stakeholders, key businesses in town, and all of the businesses. I think one thing that Andrew, I give him credit for a great idea that I think has already been very successful, is we had our first manufacturers roundtable meeting. We've had a couple of new manufacturers come to town, but we've also have, in Marion Manufacturer, Doug Johnson and others that are willing to sort of kind of what John was saying, almost mentor a little bit a business and, hey, this is a good town to come start your business, and manufacturing, is alive and well in pockets, and certainly in this area, the rich history we have. They had a meeting right in here with, I think, about a dozen, and they're sharing ideas and contact information, and just that I thought was a great. And to Sylvia's point, you probably should have done a quick little video of it, and we'll maybe do that for the next meeting. But we're trying to do some of those where maybe we don't necessarily have to go into everyone's business all the time, but maybe invite some folks in, like-minded businesses that maybe can get around the table and just share ideas and thoughts, and we can hear the honest feedback of things we're doing well, things we're not doing well, and there's plenty of those. So I appreciate all of those comments. I would say one thing I've really tried to instill, and again, a lot of this comes from, the council when I was first hired here 4 years ago was very clear economic development was a big priority. So that's where a lot of this certainly comes from, and I believe in it and I enjoy it, and it's been great having Andrew's office in my office area as opposed to where it is before, because we're really in it a little more than I think we were before. But we are always preaching that every department has a role to play in economic development, right? So it's the building department, and it's the planning department, and it's the tax department and the assessors department, and the way that you treat businesses and taxpayers that are coming in. And we really try to instill that in our folks, and we can always do a better job. But I think that's really, economic development is one department of one person, but it's also really a commitment for all of our staff. So, and again, we're also bringing back, thankfully with COVID, we had a wonderful business appreciation breakfast. Gosh, what was it, 3.5 years ago at Elam Park? We haven't really been able to do that quite the same, but we have plans to bring that back, and all businesses are invited to that at Elam Park once that is scheduled later this later this year or early next year.
Anybody else? Okay, so I think we've got some marching orders. I've got a lot of notes here. Okay. Now, the next one is the major projects that we had identified. What did we call it?
Major projects.
Project.
Yeah,
Right,
it
right,
was
right,
major
right.
projects.
Major project.
Surprisingly enough.
And he said he got an A.
Yeah. And so what score do we have, Peter?
40.
40.
Oh.
Okay. Oh, we're slipping. Right. Okay. And
Out of 45.
any, yeah.
It's still an A. Not an F. Just sounds like an F.
I know,
45.
Yeah, right,
41.
right, okay. How did we determine what the major projects were and how should we determine what they are going forward? Sean, can you give us any thought process as to what you see as major projects that we need to be looking at? And then we'll talk about what we see.
Sure. I mean, a lot of the ones that we had identified last year, were certainly ongoing, either recently or soon to be approved capital projects are probably the major ones. Others, I think Fen Road was mentioned because we were in the throes of, and again, these often span more than 1 year, right? That took 2 years to probably finalize, 2.5. Similarly, I think going forward, clear priorities in terms of major projects for the council are Bartland Park South and school modernization are going to go hand in hand. And the role that the town manager's office is going to continue to play in both of those major projects, I think, I would suggest will probably be kind of 1A and 1B of the big list. But, but we have, again, some of these, sometimes they're not necessarily the largest dollar projects, but they're some complicated or kind of strategic projects that we have, whether it's West Main Street improvements and other other similar projects that we just discussed through the capital budget process. And then again, we have to look to some of our longer term. We don't quite have them all coming up so soon, but we mentioned, last time we had the Wallingford transfer station closure and what's our future plan for, which we solved. I mean, we found a good solution and the town's in a good place now. But again, in this same section, I would imagine in the coming years, you'll see what to do with the AJ Waste solid waste curbside, collection contract, which will be up in 2025. And a few of our other longer term contracts. Trinity is up, I believe, in 2 years. So that's something that we'll have to talk about. The ambulance contract. So I know they're not necessarily all major projects, but they're big initiatives that take,
They have to start before.
they have to start early, right? And then,
Right.
and the council needs to be up to speed and also needs to give the feedback of their take on those services. So that communication, I think, is really important. And that's why prioritizing them and making sure we all know, hey, we got to start talking about, trash or ambulance or whatever. So those, I think, could fit nicely here. But
So I think we will look for you to guide us in that direction, but I certainly would ask any of you, if you see a project that you feel is important that we should be paying attention to, that's not one of these or one that he's just mentioned, this is the time to at least say,
Well, I
how
know there's
about
a
the
few,
project?
there's a few that are like, sort of should be on that list, they're already on it, I guess.
Right,
You've got
well, that's it.
You
It's
got
school
that North
modernization.
End thing that we're investigating. There's certain things,
Yeah.
that
That are gonna
have
be-
already begun,
Right,
or
right,
not completed, so.
so,
and I think the last one on there has again come up a number of times too, that I think the future of, Mixville Park's kind of master planning, it's something that I have John kind of working on, and we're always talking about kind of what is the identity of Mixville Park. We always have the summer issues of, how do we balance the usage and the in-town use and the out-of-town use and the fee structure and all that. And not to get too specific, but
Right.
that's a park that really just needs some dedicated time and some feedback from the rec commission and from the town council as to what do we want mixed. It can be improved. We know it can, and how do we get there? So I see that as a key.
and the other part of the recreation piece is the trail, and we are managing that very well now, but are there issues with the trail? Are we going to have to repave it? Are we going to have to do any maintenance of trees that are falling on the trail? Or how did the police department monitor the activity that sometimes is not pleasant? Those issues are something that need to be on the radar somewhere. I don't know that it's anything we can do much about this minute, but those are things that would.
One of the things,
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry.
No.
one of the things maybe we could put on here would be dealing with the parking issue with West Johnson Avenue as a major issue that we want to deal with, because we contributed to,
West Main.
West Main.
West Main.
Johnson,
I'm sorry.
parking.
I got
There's
that.
no parking there. I was
West
just trying to say
Main.
I would love more.
West Main Street, because I think we all know that that's important because of the trail, because of the loss of the other parking, and because the further development there, that may be one that we want
That
to
may be, yeah, right. And
consider.
I know Ball and Socket has a long-term plan to expand it even further. Beyond this, there's a second phase that we participating in slightly in that funding, and then there's even more
Third one,
behind that.
yes.
So I know that'll be coming along for sure. And the extra trail parking has been fantastic already. I mean, now that I live in the neighborhood, I've checked those things out, right? And it's being used very nice, very well. So, yeah, but that's another one we can put on
As
there.
far as the parking issue on West Main, could we also kind of take an inventory of all the parking in the West Main commercial area and kind of, I guess, identify where those areas are and say to the public that they're available at certain times of day, or because there's a lot of parking behind some of those buildings that do not really get a lot of use.
Yeah, there are. It's a good. It kind of speaks to one of the big projects that Andrew is working on, that the council supported the submission for that bar grant in terms of changing and working with the planning department on some of the design standards, if I'm saying that correctly, and some of the parking requirements that can be counted towards some of the development as you try to build a little more of a village feel there in the future, or at least lay the groundwork for it. But I mean, obviously, a lot of the parking behind those buildings are all private property currently, but not to say that arrangements couldn't be worked out and deals made that. But it's sort of, I mean, as we watch that evolve, and it's incredibly exciting. The future of West Main Street, I think, is very bright. Some of it is if you build it, they will come, and then some of this is the buildings will come, and then you'll need the parking, and you react.
Right.
And I mean, that's the push pull that we all kind of feel as development happens. And but certainly, I think parking in that area and access to that area is going to be a key.
And there's a lot of available property there that is not developed yet, and there's the potential to develop as things evolve, and that's very important that we keep an eye on how that is. There's a big parcel that goes parallel to Deepwood, and the neighbors there are very concerned. They love what's going on West Main. They think that's great, but their backyards back up to a big piece of property, which potentially could be developed into any number of uses. And so I think it's important that we keep an eye on just exactly where the parking's going to be and what we would like to see going there and that kind of thing. Yeah.
Go ahead.
I mean, that just probably obviously the question ultimately is for me looking forward as a former P&Z commissioner and that is, when we look at a place like West Main Street, and I know it's been talked about with the West Main Street Village and the district, and the question is ultimately where we go with this as to whether the town takes more of a affirmative viewpoint on this as far as planning for it and suggestions and, looking at that as a holistic thing and potentially suggesting things for the Planning and Zoning Commission to look forward to, rather than, or do we wait and see what developers bring
Proactive instead of
forward
reactive.
to the because if you want it to look a certain way and you want to maximize that space in a way that makes it more of a district, then maybe you don't say, okay, for this project, I'm going to have this developer is going to come in and do it this way. Well, if they do this, then that kind of screws up the plan for these people and these people. So whether we want to look at that and have more of a proactive approach from the planning department and planning and zoning commission to create the opportunity for that to be developed in a certain, at least or at least allow it to be maximized in a way that perhaps maximizes parking and does some of those things. Because the other problem, at least I see, is that West Main Street, that area, traffic is not very friendly to start with, and we're going to have to do something. We're going to have to plan for that. Otherwise, we're just going to put buildings in there, and no one's going to be able to make left turns onto the road, and everyone's going to stack up. So we're going to have to do something.
That's not a special design district, is it, technically?
Not
I mean,
yet.
It's mentioned, it's mentioned in the town plan.
Right.
Yeah,
Highlighted.
as an important emphasis
Yeah.
area for this, that, and the other thing, but it's not, it doesn't have that status, which unless it just should, and that's not really our purview.
No, but I'm
But it
saying,
might be something, a conversation in the planning office one day with the town manager and economic development, comes up and they say, that's a horrible idea, I don't think so, and here's why.
Right. the
You know, but you know, you
investigate
guys can
things.
do that shop talk, you know,
Yeah.
we can't get along with planning and zoning, legally, I guess.
No, but I'm
Right.
just saying, but you know, as when we look at this,
Right.
these major projects, and
They
if
all
we're
come
looking at
together.
that development,
Right.
you know, so the question is, do you let it just happen, or do you try to direct it in a way, you know,
Right.
with some guidance that you know, if we want it to look like this, then maybe, you know, then there have to be some suggestions for
Right.
that.
And it's exactly what I was gonna talk about. I think that the grant that Andrew was after was to try and do what you're talking about,
Right.
David, which was to try and provide some enhanced planning for that area beyond what's in the plan of development or beyond what's in the current regulations, to try and direct that. And I'm of the opinion that the grant,
Right.
that we need to fund that kind of study
Yeah.
to drive that, the planning and the planned development of that in a way that the Planning and Zoning Commission can implement,
Right.
but give them direction as to what the council and the town would like to see there in a way that's more organized. Things like, you know, joint parking standards, things like that, and types of uses that are acceptable. Planning and zoning can implement that vision through whether it's a special design district or whatever. I don't know how they would do it, but I think we should be proactive, and if we don't get the grant, I think it's something we should talk about as a council, funding that work separately because it is important, and it's important that we don't wait too long to get that done before people come in there and do something that doesn't fit with what might work well in the
Long
future.
term, yeah.
And we have history there too, John. We have the beautification effort, which is very old.
Mhm.
And they're still pruning the trees that are too big. But the point is, there was a plan. It probably started in the council at the time. There was the linear trail plan. There are things that can
Right.
get started here that require a more broader sort of emphasis.
It is amazing with the councils and with the trail going through and with the council. I know the council initiated the streetscape work there.
Yep.
It's amazing what that what
It
that
was important.
created through that
It was a
initiation. I
big
mean,
deal.
it created a focus on something.
Yep.
All of a sudden, people saw, wow, we can continue to invest here. And there's been a lot of investment.
Right.
So it's great. But it is, I think it's important that we do exactly what David's talking about, which is the town take control over that to a certain degree rather than let it just now continue to evolve.
I think that's really important because the history of the town, I've been here a long time and I sat on a Route 10 study committee in 1960 something.
Wow.
68 or 70.
You're that old.
Yeah, I am. And then it won again in 10 years later in like 1978 and one in 1988. And we came up with all sorts of wonderful plans to make Route 10 more user friendly, and by putting in, I guess, frontage roads or back ways to get, while the land was available and before the building came in, and nobody would take the risk to change that. And the answer was always, property owners won't like it or they won't agree. And after the fourth time, I said, I'm not gonna sit on this committee anymore because it just doesn't work. But I mean, they were very good suggestions that were made. This is the time we can make those suggestions work on West Main Street, because people say, why didn't you do it? And I said, well, go look at the minutes, they're there, we tried. And I think that we're right to make this work in this particular area, however it works out, that we need, I agree 100% with that.
There still are some paper roads in File County.
There are,
In
there
the
are.
planning office.
There-
It would
there
be
are.
wonderful,
Yeah.
but they're on private property.
You know, yeah.
So some of the plans were actually executed, just not executable.
Right.
Planning was.
Yeah. Right, but it could have been, if it had been directed the right way, it could have been, a lot of that could have been done with the right mindset, and it didn't, nobody had a
Yeah, but it's
mindset at the time.
The rear access from right over here,
Yeah.
back up to Campaigns,
Yeah,
all that there would have been
exactly,
rear
right.
access,
Yeah,
which would have been great, and less traffic on Route 10, they would have been allowed to go on Route
absolutely,
10.
and down in
Exactly
the
what we're
south
thinking
end, you
about.
wouldn't have all those
Yep.
curb cuts, kids
Right.
cutting in and
See
out.
those drawings, they're still good.
And there was a talk to make the road come directly up Route 68, 70, right across the parking lot to the traffic light across from Liberty Bank, so that it was a intersection straight through 10 and took the traffic off.
Maple Crop,
Couldn't do that. I mean, there were a lot of different options that were put forward, so it's, yeah, oh yeah, that was gonna be, the post office was in those.
Glad you weren't discouraged.
Well, keep trying. All right. Okay, so I think we are all pretty in agreement with that one, and I think when Sean comes to us with his recommendations, personnel will put all these notes together. We'll come back to you and come up with those goals and objectives that you will approve, but at least we can formalize them. Now, the last one may take the longest time, because that was the one I think that was probably had the most.
Got an F.
Yeah, well, I don't know if I got an F. But it had some
No.
wider disparities in
38.
prices, and that is the
I was gonna say the score.
the town operations, although they're very good, there were some comments about a lot of in the communication area, I think, mainly. So is anybody willing to step forward and tell us what your concerns are or were? Nobody?
I will.
Okay.
Well, I think several of us actually mentioned the website, and I think it still needs to be a little more user friendly. I mean, I get lost on there trying to find things, and I just, I think we need to work on that a little bit, because I know we spent a lot of money doing it, but I think, you know, in terms of user friendly, it's far from it.
Do you feel that way from the town perspective?
100%.
Okay, good, because I thought it was just me because I'm not a
Yeah,
computer
it's-
person, but it's just not.
It's
a
been an
friendly-
ongoing frustration.
Yeah, right.
I think there are parts of it that are better
Very
than what we
good.
had.
Mhm.
But I would fully admit there are parts of it that I think the old one just, could just kind of get where you needed to go. We still have I come across dead links and things from a time that are just not really acceptable. And I think, unfortunately, I think we're going to have to figure out a solution. And I'm worried that the vendor that was selected, and at this point it was 5 or 6 years ago, just doesn't have all of the capabilities to make it what we need it to be. They don't have.
There's a new vendor in town.
Yeah,
There is,
There is a
and
new
that is
vendor.
opening my
Yeah.
eyes. And I
Right.
think that, I know it was a long, tedious process, and I think the best was made of what we had. But I think my personal opinion is that vendor just was not the best choice. And I think it's hard when you have a very complicated project like that takes a lot of coordination with a lot of departments, and frankly, departments that aren't all, they'll do what you need them to do, but a lot of that work fell just on this office. And that project was happening when I started here.
and the frustration
Yeah,
that
so
our
4 years ago.
we
Yeah,
would
yeah,
go
and I know
in, we'd
part-
come in and she worked so hard to try and make it work.
It was really hard, but I think
Bane of my
it was, yeah. And we are a little bit at a crossroads where we're going to have to decide.
Yeah.
Can it be improved to the point that it is what we need, or do we need to? I mean, that might find its way onto
Yeah.
a major project list
Right,
again.
right.
Don't please do anything.
Yeah.
But I mean, we can do it, and
It's greatly improved.
it is improved. It is
Oh,
improved.
yeah, it's
There are
better than
certainly
it was.
Yeah,
It's just
right,
still confusing. to
Well, and some of
people.
the department pages are just, and there's still a learning curve with the new system and trying to get, the staff that needs to
Never find
update it.
anything.
Yeah, and again, my biggest frustration are the dead links, which we tried to work out, but there's still some that send you to Civic Live and all this stuff. So, I mean, it is definitely something that we know it's just not where it needs to be, and we rely on it a lot. And so, I mean, it's the feedback was very well received. And end time, I think we've continued to have these conversations. We have some additional support with Apex now, as we just approved at the last meeting, and we've talked about kind of trying to get some of that dedicated support to make it better, or if we have to, we might have to find a different solution that I don't think we're getting with this product what we deserve for the money we're paying, and I think we got to just come to terms with that. So it loud and clear, and I think that's an area where, and more in this environment, including through COVID, you need a good website that is communicates well with the public on mobile devices and on laptops and iPads, and it just doesn't really do all that very well. So
And we'll add one more thing
Yep.
on top of that is the transition between the town attorney. I think went very smoothly.
Yeah.
I have to give credit to our council too. I mean, I think we worked hard to make sure that we chose the right person for that job, and I think we did. And I think you guys had to work with them, and after being with the same town attorney for a while, and it's not easy, but I think everything came out great with Jeff, and I think I'm very pleased with with what we've gotten from him, especially financially. I think we're saving a lot of money on that.
Do you see any issues with that? I mean, are there
No,
any
it's been-
things that are concerns of yours?
From the town attorney's
Yeah,
perspective,
right,
none at all.
No.
I
We've
think
all-
had
Right, we've all. heard
responsiveness
wonderful
is-
stuff.
is-
Yeah,
Sometimes almost incredibly responsive,
Yeah.
almost like, why are you, I just thought of this and emailed you on Saturday and you have your legal opinion at 11:15 on Saturday.
It's like Amazon. Wait, I was just
Yeah.
thinking about it.
So, and
tapped into your phone.
maybe that's what it is, but and the quality's been great, and he's personable, he's been very supportive, in the council. I think he's fit right in, and
Yeah.
to top it all off, it's been at a better rate than we had before, so
Right,
we're doing
yeah.
well.
It's fine. Anybody else have any? Yeah.
I just wanted, I think this is incredibly important and the customer service part of this. I agree with other comments. I think there's possible improvement on the website, et cetera, but I think that's everyone's, is in agreement there. And I don't think it's a disaster by any means. I've seen plenty of communities that websites are really a disaster. Ours, I don't think it's a disaster. Customer service is really important to me personally. I have the sense that, first of all, that Sean, you are focused on customer service personally, and that's where it begins. It begins at the top, the leader. If the leader is focused on customer service, then people understand that that's important. And I sense that you are. I get a good impression every time I deal with you personally. I think that's not isolated to me. I think that's how you act and operate with everyone that you come in contact with. So that makes me really comfortable. I get the sense that your department heads have great camaraderie with you, that they trust you and they work with you well. A little bit I've seen. I don't know how that camaraderie carries through to all the departments and how they deal with their own staff. I just don't have any sense of that. But I do think that if the community is going to be successful, how all of our employees interact with everyone in the community all the time is incredibly important. And I have seen past examples where town employees have provided a sense that they're more important than the people they serve. And that comes oftentimes with power and a little bit of authority. And I've seen it in many communities. I've seen it a lot at the state level, and agencies at the state level where they feel they don't have to answer to the people that they really should answer to. Don't see it a lot in Cheshire, but just a little bit. And I think everything we can do to make customer service a high priority and make our employees understand that their job is to work for the residents of the community. And those residents include the residents and the business owners and the real estate developers that are doing work and the contractors doing work. I get a sense that, and I've seen it. I mean, we hired an individual who was the city engineer in Hamden for many years, hired him in our office. One of the reasons we hired him when he retired was because when he was the city engineer in Hamden, he was just generous. He never took his position and used it as an ability, to give someone the sense that he controlled their destiny. And because of that, we were anxious to hire him when he retired, and he carried that through an office for 10 or 15 years, stayed employed in construction oversight. But I've been in other communities where town engineers feel that, they have authority over you and they treat it like that, and it's just not right. I don't want to see Cheshire become that. I think we're not that, but I think that's one of the most important things that you can continue to focus on in the leadership role.
And John, I would like to just jump onto that because I agree with that. And the people, I've had a couple of experiences recently with some new people in offices. I never come into an office if I need something and say, I'm a town councilor, you should know, and I need to see. But I've had a couple of experiences, and I'm sure it's maybe immaturity or it is age or it is something, but I've walked into an office and said, good morning, I'm Sylvia. I would like to speak with staff person. I don't have an appointment, but if he's busy or she's busy, could you just see if he has 5 minutes to speak to me? Yeah, I guess. And then she walks down the hall and goes into the office and comes back out and sits down. And I said, well, may I go in? Oh yeah, you can go in. That is not customer service for anybody. And I don't want any special treatment because I'm the town councilor. I don't look for that. I don't ever ask for it. But it could be, good morning, how can I help you? Or when the phone gets answered and it's just, I don't know, pick a department, sewer. Can you just say, good morning, this is the sewer department, I'm Sylvia, how can I help you? Or is there a protocol that we teach the people who are the front line in the office? I'm sorry, Mr. Kimball is busy at the moment. Noel's perfect at that, but there are a lot of people who are not, okay?
It's always busy.
But it,
Right.
there is a sense, having been in a customer service business and knowing how important that is, and I know that's what drove my business, we always did exactly what you said. Customer may not have always been right, but we always respected that they had a right to say whatever it was and that they were doing that. And some of these new hires have maybe not have the experience. They're busy on their phone. One of them was on the phone like this when I came in, and the phone rang, and it was good morning. And I'm thinking, time out. Could you just
That's where I would have
be
said,
in the
I am a
moment?
town
We
councilman.
don't,
Well, I
we
get
don't
that.
send you in more often.
Right.
Yes.
And it just, if I were the regular resident coming in, I would say, nobody cares for me. No wonder. Why are they taking all my tax money? They don't even, anybody, but that's wrong.
Yeah, no.
And that needs to be fixed. I don't know how you do that. Now, maybe very talented, maybe very smart, maybe computer savvy, may have gone to college, may have all of those criteria. But if they don't have a people skill, then it's not to the advantage of the town. Now, can they learn that people skill? Yes, they can. I taught that for a long time on how to do that people skill. But it's a turn off to me, and any of you will go in and get that same treatment. So I know personnel, we worked really hard to define job descriptions and require certain skills in a job, and that's fine. But how do we define that skill that says, I'm going to have to interact with the public and I need to be polite? Maybe they don't even know how to be polite because their mother never taught them to be polite. I mean, that's the world today. Nobody talks to each other. So when you come in the office, I expect at least a good morning and not a, look.
Yeah, no, I mean, those stories are incredibly disappointing to hear, and for
Right,
a reason. So that, I mean, but to your point,
It's
those
not
are pretty
everybody.
easy.
I don't mean
oh, I
to.
know,
Yeah,
but
right.
they're also relatively easy to address. As you
Yes,
said. This is not a
exactly.
technical skill that can
Right.
be learned. I think it's certainly feedback. I read that on here, even with the phone answering
Yeah,
prompt, and I thought it was a great idea. And the answer is we haven't, at least to my knowledge, have any sort of standard protocol of answering the phones or just being polite. That's part of it. But I
Yeah.
think, I mean, it's something. I have an all department head meeting tomorrow morning that I'll be giving that feedback to directly to the department heads.
building
And-
department, this is
Yeah.
Sylvia.
Yeah,
Then you at least know who you're talking to,
Right.
and well, Sylvia's not the building inspector. She's not the, whatever. Okay, I know who I'm talking to. I mean, I think that's important.
yeah, I think it's great feedback.
I think that, first of all, you only get one chance to make a good impression. And when people come into the office for any reason, and they get a situation like Sylvia got, it's
You're never
gonna,
gonna forget it.
Yeah.
they're gonna walk out of there and you don't know how many other people they're gonna tell.
That's right.
And the
Say,
other
how
thing
much
is,
time
I
do we
was
have?
always taught when you answered the telephone, people can tell if you're smiling. So if you say, hi, this is Sandy, good morning, how can I help you? That person, you already put that person in a pretty good mood, even if they're miserable. Seriously.
That's true.
Half of it is the words they're saying, but the other half is how they're taking it, even on the phone.
Right.
We hire somebody called a telephone doctor, and she comes in for a couple $1,000s and talks to all of our people. And she doesn't do just the phone, it's customer service
Yep.
skills.
Right.
That may be worth it to have people, it's just a reminder.
Sounds like it.
You know, the ones, I've got people who are 10 years, I've been through it 10 times. But it's a reminder because then it's top of mind that, hey, you've got to be friendly, you've got to be nice. Pretend there's a mirror there, make yourself, look
We
at
had
the
a
mirror.
mirror.
In our call
We had a
centers, we put the
mirror at the
mirror.
window.
Exactly,
Yeah.
yeah, in our
Yeah.
call center, I put the mirror too.
Right.
And then, because you're not gonna be mad at yourself,
That's
you
right.
know,
Right.
and then,
And it actually makes your job easier. I mean,
Yeah.
that's the thing.
Exactly.
It's actually self.
I didn't like looking at myself.
That's why I hired my wife to work for me because, for cheap too.
Yeah.
Because she worked customer service for
Yes.
15 years for Cigna.
Yeah.
And she knows how to, and I can't tell you how many people tell me, who was that who took
Right.
the message? It was my wife. They said she was very professional, very
Yeah.
polite, very nice. And, like Sandy said, I mean, first impressions are important, and you almost have to treat this like a business, because it is. I mean, we're taking people's money, and we have to make sure that they're getting the service that they expect. On the other hand, it's like those of us on the council who are hearing from constituents all the time. I mean, 95%, 99, maybe 98% of the time, when I have an issue with a constituent, I call a department head or call you or whatever, and we get our answers back. I'd like to be 100% because it's important for us to get back to these people, because we're the ones who are dealing with them, and they're asking us as their representative to do that. And I just want to make sure that all the department heads understand that when they do hear from one of us, they should be reaching out. I'm not saying immediately, but within 24 hours, 48 hours, unless it's a weekend, to get back to us. If whether they know the answer or don't know the answer, let us know what's going on so that we can at least get back to these people. That's the only issue I have seen. I mean, like I said, 95, 98% of the time it happens. Once in a while it doesn't, and it should be 100% of the time, in my opinion.
So that leads me to the question, if I have a constituent who calls me about, I don't know, pick a subject, a building department issue or public works or something, do I go directly to that department head? Is that the chain of command? I don't bother you with the issue of a sidewalk on Maple Avenue, or
I think
what's
what
our
we've-
protocol?
Right, what we've worked out, I think that's worked pretty well here.
Mhm.
And yeah, I think it's a good kind of opportunity for a refresher. I think the best thing to do would be to send an email to the department head and just CC me.
That's what I.
Okay.
And as long as I'm CC, I do think it will help just to make
Yep.
sure that email
Yep.
doesn't get lost
Mhm.
or missed, and an opportunity for me to say, hey, have you responded? Did you see that
Yeah.
email from
Okay.
Don? Because I mean, everyone gets, we all do. We all get
Sure,
those
we all get
emails. It's
busy.
possible,
Yep.
and people legitimately miss them. I will say with the new structure, it's an opportunity, I think, for, there are 7 direct reports that I have. There are now, with the new structure with our net, there are 5 departments: building, planning, economic development, and then library and social services, that our net is the direct supervisor of that department. I think for, sort of dividing and conquering a little bit, I think if there's an issue with the building department specifically, and you
Yeah.
CC our net
Yeah,
on the
okay.
email to the, in this case, to Tom Lozier, that's great. I don't need to be on that email. That's part of the delegating, we're really trying to make work.
And I think that's
Um,
good, because we
It's
bother
and
you
I
with
actually
too much stuff.
Yeah, and it really helps. What I hate, and I know it always, sometimes it happens inadvertently, I know, but if I'm not on that email, sometimes the department will follow up, and then I'll hear about it from somebody else, and then I'll think, oh, wait a second, did I owe
Did you
an explanation to the council, or we'll do kind of duplicative work. So I think the easiest is if you have an issue, and email is great because it's right there. You can't argue that you called it. I mean, the phone calls are fine. If you need to make a phone call, no problem.
Right.
But the email has the advantage of the CCing capability,
Yeah.
that if we can kind of agree to do that, when it happens, it seems to work really well. I think, again, for those 5 departments, if our net's CC'd, that's great. And if needed,
With the understanding that if it's something that John needs to know about right away, I'm gonna tell him right away.
Of
She'll
course,
knock on
of
the wall
course,
and-
yeah, right.
I'll
John
do it.
and I had an issue yesterday, and we were on the phone, and he told me about something, and I had the time, I didn't know if he did. I called and talked to Mike Glidden, and he answered my
Called me
question immediately.
Yep.
By the time I hung up, you were talking to him, or vice versa. We got it solved, and I talked to the person who had questioned it already, and then you talked to him, so it was all resolved within an hour, Nick? Yeah, so that was easy, and we.
I mean, and just sort of on that, I think back to the first comments, it has definitely been a hallmark of when we're interviewing, certainly our new department heads as we've brought on. I'm always very, very involved in those recruitments, and for obvious reasons. And there's always numerous questions about their philosophy on customer service in there. And I really think with some of those new hires, you're seeing that, and the expectation is that will permeate down through their department. So it's kind of all to the same end, but it sounded like some of the things you brought up deserve some direct
I'll
attention.
talk to you about it sometime in a private
what we're here
conversation,
for.
but yeah, right, it was just disconcerting to me.
Understood, yeah.
Yeah, Jim.
Yeah, just a few comments about this last section here. So as far as along the lines of customer service and being responsive to constituents and things like that, a few times over the last few years, people will, not a few times, but I'm sure we all get these requests, I want a sign here, or tree is blocking a sign, or it's a pothole here, or the curb is busted up, or the sidewalk's busted, blah, blah, blah. So usually I'll follow up, I'll contact you, or then I'll follow up, see if something happened. But I wonder if there's a more sort of complete way we can do this, that it's sort of the request is registered kind of officially somewhere, and then the resolution is also, it also happens at some point so that we can report to the constituent that it's been completed or when it's going to be completed. And one thing I thought was that there's, I'm sure you're aware of SeeClickFix, and then maybe other services like that.
Yeah.
If that's something that we could consider investing in as a way for our residents to have a more kind of ready way, rather than kind of trying to figure out who their counselor is, and rather than calling your office or Public Works, if there's more of an online way and more of a digital way that they can register these requests and complaints, and that there's more of a seamless way it can be resolved. Because the way it's handled right now, there's a lot of sort of, communication has to happen, human error, and things that probably fall through the cracks. And I've heard more than once over the last few years that people are like, I've asked the town about this so many times and never gets handled. I don't know how real that is necessarily, but I'm sure in some cases it is real.
Oh, absolutely.
But it's just it's not that you guys aren't doing everything you can. It's just that things fall through the cracks. So there may be some way for us to sort of improve that process, I would think.
I know to Jim's comment, that's often been a complaint over the years. And I was told the Public Works in particular has a system of logging in, and it generates some kind of a work order, and all of that good stuff. Well, I'm not sure, I think the stop signs and all those other signs, I don't know, the police are involved in some of that stuff. So I wonder where some of this can get confused because of somebody else's responsibility. And does every department have a system like that?
Yeah. So, I think the answer, and I think that's where companies like SeeClickFix have tried to fill that gap. I mean, almost every municipality has a very similar challenge, and that SeeClickFix, the idea being all departments have, things are routed based on the complaint type, and then there is that follow-up. And I agree with Jim that I think that last piece, the sort of satisfaction, I guess, for lack of a better word, of this has been looked into and resolved. And sometimes the answer might be no. We know that. Sometimes it's just, it can't be done.
Right.
Can't put a sidewalk there, not appropriate for a stop sign. But people need the resolution rather than silence, right? So I think we've seen that even, honestly, sometimes with interdepartmental requests between departments. Hey, we need this, this, and this. And then there's not that, oh, was it completed? Oh, yeah, it was completed. Oh, I didn't know it was completed. That kind of the same feedback. So the iWork system that they use in Public Works may have more capabilities to give some of those notifications automatically. That might help, certainly within the departments. But I don't think there's a similar system, or at least I know that system is not used in police or fire or anywhere else. So I think it's something we need to continue. I mean, I agree it's been a long time kind of coming in terms of a complaint we've heard before, and let us look into it a little bit more. And I agree, I'm sure there's some other products that maybe aren't quite as, I know SeeClickFix is pretty expensive for the offering, but there may be other options that we can look into, and maybe it's a customer service thing. If this is going to be a priority, make sure you put a calendar note that you have to call this person back in 2 or 3 weeks, see if it's resolved. But it is tough. I mean, I see the volume that goes through iWorks. I've logged in once to see it, and it's amazing how many. And again, we're not a small town. We're a larger town, so the number of complaints and issues do accumulate throughout every day, and it's not an excuse, except that the volume kind of necessitates some sort of a system, probably better than what we have.
So I had a question, if I may.
Sure. Yeah.
And this is specifically, Sean, a question about your management of outside buildings, like Public Works garage. Like, do you occasionally have a staff meeting there as opposed to having George come down the hall? Are there things that you are trying to do or think your presence could better affect some of these issues that have occurred, and I think that's why the score is a little lower, because we're all aware, and I think we also appreciate the fact that, you can always do better in this area. I think that's why the score is really low, relative to the others. Do you? Just a
Yeah,
quick
I
question.
mean, I think it's an area I need to do more, but I think certainly following treatment plants, an example, I've had meetings out in the conference room at the treatment plant, and Public Works Garage, visited for some employee retirements and other things there, but not to your point, kind of a sit down and staff meeting out there. And I think that's good feedback that I think we can make some
It's
additional
kind of like,
communication.
I remember when, in my earlier world, there was like the big boss and then there was the other bosses, and I was the boss. And when the big boss was there, there was just this sense that, better be, on top of things, and there might be people that want to shine when the big boss is around.
Right.
Someone who's doing other tasks that have nothing to do with the big boss. I don't know.
Right.
I just think that could be part of a routine.
Yeah. I think it's great feedback, and we have a number of. Again, I think you're right. I think it's been more. I spent a lot of time down at the pool when we were having pool issues or inspecting the liner or whatever, but not just sort of a pop in or a, hey, let's go in there next week. And
Yeah, a surprise visit, I think.
it's good to get out of the office.
Well, sometimes the king is sitting at his castle up here and the workers feel like you don't value them because they're down here.
Right.
And when we all know that everybody in this room is part of the team, and so you're the leader and it's up to you to make sure things happen. But that doesn't mean you can't be in a room and respect a person who is out digging a trench in the backyard.
Sure.
I mean, and that I think sometimes that's where you get issues with employees in any business, not necessarily here, was who does he think he is? He's the boss, I mean, doesn't he know what we do in this office all the time? Can't he hear the phone rings? Can't he, what, this person came in and complained, he never comes down here. So, I mean, that would be my sense.
Well, we've also said we want to have our meetings at those places too.
Yes,
We have
right,
those-
exactly.
Right,
I
we
think
used to
we
do
should.
that,
yeah.
We used
We
to,
would,
yeah.
rarely,
Right, I
but
think
that's
that's
quarterly
still-
meetings for
yeah, I
public
think we
works.
should.
We should get that in our plans, yeah.
Board of Ed does that.
Yeah.
To their credit,
Sure.
one of their meetings is
Yeah.
every month is out in the
Out
field,
in
if
the
you
field,
will.
yeah. And we should do that.
Yeah.
We
They were
talked
very
about it
well
many
received by the
times.
neighbors.
Right.
When we met at number 2 Firehouse, and everybody from Byham Road came
Right.
by, and it was nice that they saw us. Doolittle, all the neighborhood, the neighborhood places are nice to see. So it's something for us.
Because we care about the job you're doing. Thank you very much for the job you're doing. We appreciate
Well,
that you're here.
I don't know if it was that
You
reception.
said you had council meetings up there?
Yeah.
No,
Oh, yeah.
the council
For about
is
2 or
saying
3
that
years,
to
we
the
had them
employees.
in,
It's good.
like quarterly, we would go
Yeah,
somewhere else.
right. We met at the senior center, the
Yeah.
fire department,
Well,
right?
right, and of course,
Library,
this wasn't here for a while too because of the addition.
even after that.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
the problem today is the
Right,
recording of it.
exactly.
Yeah.
And
No,
that's-
I might go there, so don't-
But at the
Yeah.
staff.
Yeah,
just getting back
mobile
to
mic.
staff level- At the staff level, just
Right.
getting back to your staff, I mean, you don't have to be on TV, you don't have to be minuted.
No.
So,
Yeah.
you can take those field trips, maybe it would be beneficial, maybe it's not.
Undercover
So,
boss. You can-
Let's just do a quick wrap up. I think this has gone on longer than I thought it would. However, I think it's been very valuable to have this feedback, and I appreciate all your input here. Personnel is gonna meet before we leave. Are you around, Peter, now, or are you going on vacation somewhere? Do we have time for a
I'm around.
meeting? You're going away.
On the 4th.
I'm going away on the 1st. You're around.
I'm not going.
You're not
Poor
going,
guy's
okay.
done.
So after
I'm always
next
here.
week, can we schedule a meeting on the second week in August, toward the
Sure.
end of the second week in August? To
I'm
go over
I'm back
this?
the 12th.
Or you're not here for the council meeting?
No.
You're not here, okay, so after the 12th, Noel, after the 12th, let's find a time that we can get a person, and we'll put all this together
Yep.
and we'll work on that. But I appreciate all your input, Sean. I hope you know that we're very pleased with your performance in general. And hopefully all our comments were made with respect and with just the intent to make your job better. And so with that,
I'd just like to make one
Yes.
comment. I'd like to thank you, Sylvia, and the Personnel Committee. I think you did an outstanding job on this.
well, you did it, you wrote it.
Well, the whole
I
thing
just-
was
I know,
easier
but
done,
you
it was made
coordinated.
easier.
Yeah, and then
That's
Made it
really,
easier for us.
that's how we feel. Yeah.
Thank you, right.
Have some guidance.
So this is a good template to do it another time.
Yep.
That was one of our goals. So I will turn it back to you, Mr.
Okay, I know that, Sean and I have talked about the contract thing, and I know that has to come back. And we had thought, that would be something we could resolve at the meeting of the 21st. I think that's whatever the
23rd.
date is, we're gonna adopt the capital budget. So,
Right, well, we're gonna try and meet before then. but we-
absolutely.
Yeah, that's what
Absolutely,
we're trying
that's
to do.
why
Yep.
I thought if
Right.
you understood that.
Yeah, yeah.
You would have a
Yeah,
chance
I
to,
don't see any reason why we can't do that.
Right.
Yeah.
So this is sort of a timeline that
Yeah.
we can knit this all together.
I believe that will be the plan.
Okay. And with that, I'll just mention, I'm gonna be away, but there's someone always at my house, so you can't break in anyway.
You got good neighbors. We have a neighborhood watch system anyway.
So, anyway, I'll be away next week, but, we're gonna figure out a way to do our agenda meeting, Monday, I believe it is. And, I will take a call. It can be a call, it can be Zoom, I don't care what you guys want.
Yeah, I think we're gonna talk right after
Yeah.
this.
Yeah,
about
if we
schedule
could just
that.
talk to you for real quick.
Very good.
afterwards.
Okay, so with that, I guess there's really nothing further. I will, call for motion.
Motion to adjourn.
Second,
All those in favor?
Okay,
Don and Dave.
Don.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
That was good. I was, I thought